I rarely went back to my hometown during vacation, but after dinner, my dad ordered me to wash the dishes. I froze. Don't we have a housekeeper? My mom frowned. Laura works so hard taking care of us every day. Since you're back, you should let her rest. You should do everything. But I couldn't understand. I'm paying her to be our housekeeper. Isn't that what she's here for? Why should I pay money and still do the work myself? This comment made the housekeeper cry and angered my parents. My mom frowned. What good are you? I barely see you once a year. Laura is more thoughtful than you. At least she's here every single day. My dad pointed at my nose. Don't bother coming back anymore. From now on, Laura is our real daughter. You can go do whatever you want. I laughed bitterly. I was busy with work, but I sent home plenty of money every month, and even hired an expensive housekeeper. Yet in the end, they treated the housekeeper like their daughter. If that's how it is, I won't be paying the housekeeper's salary anymore. The company gave us time off, so I went home early. I wanted to surprise my parents, but when I got to the house, my key wouldn't open the door. I tried several times, but the key still wouldn't turn. That's when I realized they'd changed the locks. With no other choice, I pulled out my phone and called my mom. It rang several times before she picked up. I could hear the bustling sounds of shopping in the background, along with my mom's voice. Hello, Charlotte. Why are you calling all of a sudden, Mom? I'm home, standing outside. Why was the lock changed? I can't get in. My mom paused for a few seconds before answering slowly. Oh, you're back. Your dad, Laura, and I are out shopping. Just wait by the door for a bit. We'll be back soon. Before I could say anything else, she hung up. I stood in the hallway with my suitcase. Wait for a full hour. Finally, I heard footsteps in the corridor. I looked up and saw my parents walking ahead with a housekeeper. Laura squeezed between them. Her right hand was linked affectionately with my mom's arm, and her left hand carried shopping bags for my dad. The three of them were laughing and chatting like a family of three. When they reached the door and saw me standing there, none of them looked surprised. My dad just glanced at me indifferently, and my mom only said casually, "Oh, you're back." Laura, on the other hand, immediately let go of my mom's hand. A warm smile spread across her face as she hurried toward me. Charlotte, you're home. Why didn't you tell us in advance? We could have picked you up. I forced a smile and nodded slightly, my eyes falling on the door lock. When was the lock changed? Why didn't anyone tell me? Laura quickly explained. It was changed a month ago. The old lock was getting stuck. It wasn't very safe. I was worried about Uncle and Auntie since they're getting older, so I had someone install a new one. I didn't have time to tell you. Please don't mind, Charlotte. Before I could respond, my dad snorted coldly and pushed open the door, his tone dripping with dissatisfaction. Someone who couldn't even come home for Christmas. What difference does changing the lock make to you? I knew my dad was still upset that I hadn't come home for Christmas. He was holding a grudge. I didn't want to start a fight the moment I got back, so I didn't respond and just followed them inside. After entering, I instinctively went to the shoe cabinet to get my slippers, but I saw my pair of fleece slippers on Laura's feet. Laura noticed my gaze and awkwardly pulled out a pair of disposable slippers from the bottom of the cabinet, handing them to me. Charlotte, I'm sorry, I put on the wrong ones. Wear these for now. I looked at the thin, disposable slippers, then at my fleece slippers on Laura's feet. A strange feeling rose in my chest, but I didn't say anything. I silently changed into the disposable slippers. After dinner, I just sat down to rest and recover from the long journey. When my dad pointed at the dining table, "Go wash the dishes," I stood there stunned and instinctively replied, "Don't we have a housekeeper?" My mom immediately frowned, put down her water glass, and gave me a stern look. Laura works so hard taking care of us, cooking, cleaning, exhausting herself all day long. Now that you're back, let her rest. What's wrong with you washing some dishes? I'm exhausted from work, too, I said, looking at them in confusion. I work overtime every day. I finally got a break and came home to rest. And you want me to do chores? Besides, I'm paying her good money to be here. Isn't this what she's supposed to do? Why should I pay and still do the work myself? Laura stood to the side, head lowered, looking like she'd been wrong. My dad slammed his hand on the table, his face darkening as he shouted at me, "Money, money, money. All you care about is money. Is there anything in your eyes besides money? I think you'd rather spend time with your money and your job than with your parents. You didn't come home for Christmas. You barely visit. And now when you're finally here, all you talk about is money. You might as well just live with your money and your job. Why even bother coming back?" My mom sighed beside him, disappointment filling her eyes. Exactly. After you started working, you rarely come home. I barely see you once a year. Laura is the one who takes care of everything around here. When we're feeling unwell, Laura is the one who runs around getting medicine, bringing us water, taking care of us. And you as our daughter, do you even care about us? As her words fell, Laura gently stepped forward, reached out to hold my mom's hand, and softly consoled her. Don't be angry. Charlotte's a senior manager now. She's busy with work. It's not that she doesn't want to come home. Hearing them talk like this made me so angry I wanted to laugh. I don't care about them. I send them $10,000 a month for living expenses. Worried they'd be too frugal to spend it, I hired a high-priced housekeeper to take care of their meals and daily needs. I work myself to death out there so they can live comfortably. How did I become worse than a paid housekeeper in their eyes? I clenched my fists, suppressing my anger. Mom, Dad, that's not fair. You say I don't care about you, that I only focus on work and money. Before, whenever I had free time, I came home. You complained I was wasting money, said I looked foolish, always coming back like a child who never grew up, told me to stop running home all the time. I listened. But I've never missed calling or video chatting. Have I never missed sending your monthly living expenses? Have I? I hired Laura at a high salary specifically to take care of you. Doesn't any of that count in your eyes? My dad's face immediately darkened. But you didn't even come home for Christmas. Is that acceptable? You weren't here for a family reunion. What good is money? Your mom and I have enough. We don't need your money. Don't be upset. Laura quickly stepped forward, gently tugging on my dad's arm with an obedient smile. Charlotte has a tough working in New York. Senior managers are so busy. She can't help it. I'm sure she still thinks about you in her heart. But my dad only got angrier after hearing that. Senior manager. So what? Why does a girl need to work so hard? Eventually she'll get married and return to family life anyway. What's the point of climbing so high? My mom chimed in. Charlotte, you're not young anymore. You really should consider getting married. A colleague at work has a son about your age. He's honest and dependable, works locally, and comes from a good family. Since you're back this time, why don't you meet him? If it works out, you can get engaged. I didn't even think before refusing. I don't want to go on blind dates, and I don't want to get married. You don't want to get married? My dad's face turned iron blue. Are you planning to spend your whole life with your job? Why not? I met his gaze. My dad was so angry, his chest heaved. Your mom and I are getting old. We need someone nearby. If you go on blind dates, get married, and stay here, we'll have someone to rely on, someone to take care of us. Why can't you think about us? I frowned. Haven't I already hired Laura to take care of you? My dad slammed the table and issued his ultimatum. Then, if you won't get married, quit your job and come back to take care of us. Otherwise, stop recognizing us as your parents. And we'll make Laura our daughter instead. I laughed in frustration. When I graduated, I planned to find work back home so I could easily take care of you. I looked at them calmly, but you thought it was embarrassing. For a graduate of a prestigious university to work in a small town. You said I had no ambition and forced me to go to New York. Struggled in New York for so many years, finally getting a foothold and building my current life. And now with one sentence, you want me to give it all up and quit? I shook my head firmly. That's impossible. My dad's brow furrowed, his voice immediately rising. What do you mean impossible? We raised you all these years. And when we ask you to come back, you make excuses. I'm not making excuses. I explained patiently. My job in New York is what I fought for all these years. I just give it up. All my suffering would be for nothing. So you're just going to abandon us? My mom joined in, her face full of disapproval. You're our only daughter. When we're old, who else can we rely on but you? I didn't say I'd abandon you. I took a deep breath and offered a solution. If you want me to take care of you, fine. Move to New York and live with me. That way I can work and look after you at the same time. My dad immediately waved his hand dismissively to New York. We've lived in our hometown for decades. All our relatives and friends are here. We're not moving to some unfamiliar place where we don't know anyone. My mom nodded along. Exactly. You're still renting in New York. How could that be as comfortable as home? We're not going. I frowned. If you won't go and I can't quit, then there's nothing I can do. My dad's face darkened. Nothing you can do. I think you've just grown wings and don't care about us anymore. Anyway, I won't quit. My tone was firm, without any hint of compromise. Dad opened his mouth, about to continue scolding me when Laura quickly stepped forward, gently mediating. Charlotte rarely comes home. Let's talk nicely as a family, instead of fighting and hurting each other. She turned to me with a gentle smile. Charlotte, uncle and auntie are just getting older and want someone to keep them company. That's natural. Don't be upset hearing this. My dad's expression softened slightly. He looked at Laura with instant warmth. Laura is so understanding, so considerate of us, not like you. All you care about is work and money. I was too tired to argue with them anymore. Even one more word felt exhausting. I turned and headed to my room. The moment I pushed open the door, I froze completely. My bed had unfamiliar sheets and a comforter. The desk was covered with skincare products and hair ties. The closet was full of women's clothing. Clearly, someone had been living here long term. I whipped around to look at Laura, who had followed me. Don't you have your own room? Why are you living in mine without permission? Laura's eyes flickered, and she lowered her head, looking flustered. Charlotte,
I'm sorry.
Before she could finish, my mom spoke up to explain. Laura's air conditioner broke. We tried to fix it several times, but couldn't. It was cold. So I let her stay in your room. You never come home anyway. It would just sit empty. The anger in my chest flared up again. Even if I don't stay here, this is still my room. How could you let her move in without asking me? How could we? My dad suddenly roared, his face livid. Your mom and I bought this house. We can let whoever we want live here. Forget letting Laura stay. We could kick you out if we wanted. I was trembling with rage looking at my parents, who should have been so familiar. They suddenly felt like strangers. This was supposed to be my home, but I felt like an outsider. I stopped arguing, turned and walked to the entryway, pulling my suitcase behind me.
Fine.
If you want me to leave, I'll leave. My dad snorted coldly, his face full of disdain. Go ahead and leave. If you're so capable, don't come back to this house. My mom opened her mouth, but in the end she only sighed and said nothing more. Laura stood to the side anxiously, speaking up. Charlotte, don't be angry. It's all my fault.
I'll move out right now.
I didn't want to hear her talk. I pulled my suitcase and walked out the door without looking back, dragged the heavy case down the stairs step by step, and finally took a cab to a nearby hotel. The next day at noon, my cousin Muriel called Charlotte. We're visiting the ancestors' graves today. You're back, right? Hurry over. Everyone's almost here.
Got it.
I'm on my way. After hanging up, I quickly got ready and headed to the cemetery. When I arrived, I could see from a distance that all the relatives had gathered. My parents were there too, but as I got closer, I stopped in my tracks. I was there too, standing beside my mom. Muriel saw me first and waved. Charlotte, over here. I walked over and asked quietly, why is she here?
More insight.
Your parents brought her. After the ancestral rites were finished, everyone went to a pre-booked restaurant for a meal. The whole extended family sat around a large table. During the meal, my mom said, since all the relatives are here today, Caesars and I have something to announce. Dad took over looking at everyone. We're planning to officially adopt Laura as our daughter. As soon as those words came out, the table fell silent. Relatives exchanged glances. My mom continued, Laura is truly thoughtful. She's with us every day, serving us tea and water, cooking and cleaning. She's more attentive than Charlotte. After my mom spoke, relatives instinctively looked at me. I held my knife and fork but said nothing. My dad glanced at me, his tone growing heavy. Unlike some people who can't be seen all year long, when she finally comes home, all she talks about is money, not thoughtful. We asked her to quit and come back to take care of us. He refused. We asked her to go on blind dates and settle down. She won't do that either. Her wings have grown hard. She doesn't care whether we live or die anymore. Muriel quickly tried to smooth things over. Charlotte does care about you. She really is busy with work. The pressure is intense.
Don't talk about her like that.
Mom immediately waved her hand, her expression sour. Busy, busy, busy. All she knows is being busy. What's the point of all that money if she can't be here with us? Laura is different. She knows when we're cold or hot, when we're not. Feeling well. She's the one running around buying medicine, bringing water, taking such good care of us. So much more reliable. My dad got more worked up as he spoke, his voice rising. Since we can't count on Charlotte, we'll adopt someone thoughtful. If Laura takes care of us in our old age, and when we die, we might as well leave this house to her. The whole table was shocked. Everyone looked at each other, no one daring to speak. Some wanted to offer advice, but seeing how determined my parents were, they swallowed their words. Meal ended in a strange atmosphere. After everyone dispersed, Muriel pulled me aside, her face full of worry. Charlotte, have your parents been brainwashed by that housekeeper? How can they say they'll leave the house to her? You need to go back and talk to them properly. You can't let them stay confused like this. I looked at Laura in the distance, laughing and chatting with my parents, and gently shook my head. Maybe they always wanted a caring daughter, who could be with them every day and obediently listen to them. I can't be that person. If they want someone else to do it, I can't stop them. The vacation ended quickly, and I prepared to return to New York. Before leaving, I called my dad. No answer. I called my mom. She hung up immediately. I tried several more times, rejected. I looked at my phone and didn't persist. I pulled my suitcase and went to the station, boarding the train back to New York. Over the next few weeks, I kept seeing my parents' Twitter posts. Today, they were eating hot pot with Laura, the three of them leaning together intimately for a photo. Tomorrow, they were walking in the park together, Laura holding my mom's arm, smiling obediently. The captions all radiated the warmth and harmony of a family of three. I scrolled through the posts without liking or commenting, pretending I hadn't seen them. Then a few days after another vacation ended, a call suddenly came in. It was my mom. As soon as I answered, I heard her dissatisfied voice come through directly. "Charlotte, why haven't you sent this month's living expenses yet? And Laura's salary? Why haven't you paid her either?" I held the phone away from my ear, the shrill pitch of my mother's voice grating against the quiet hum of my New York apartment. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the crawling yellow cabs of Manhattan, and took a slow sip of my coffee. "Are you listening to me, Charlotte?" she demanded, her breath hitching with indignation. "The agency called Laura this morning. They said her contract was terminated. And my bank account, there was no deposit from you on the first. Do you have any idea how embarrassing it was when we went to buy groceries and my card declined?" "I'm listening, Mom," I said, my voice perfectly level. "Then fix it," she snapped. "Your father is furious. He says you're throwing a childish tantrum just because we brought Laura to the cemetery. Wire the money today. And call that agency to apologize. Laura has been crying in her room all morning." A cold, dry laugh escaped my throat. I couldn't help it. The sheer audacity of it was almost magnificent. "Mom, let me ask you something," I said, leaning against the cold glass of the window. "At the family dinner, what did Dad say? And what did you agree to?" Silence on the other end, followed by a defensive scoff. "That was just to teach you a lesson. You were being so stubborn about your job and marriage." "No," I interrupted, my tone slicing through her excuse. "Dad said, in front of the entire family, that you were officially adopting Laura.
He said she is your daughter now.
He said you were going to leave the house to her because she's the one taking care of you in your old age." "Well, she just take care of us," my mother retorted, her voice rising again. "She's here. You aren't. Why are you being so petty? It's just money, Charlotte. You make plenty of it." "Exactly," I said softly. "It's my money. And since Laura is now your devoted, live-in daughter and the sole heir to your estate, it's only fair that she takes on the responsibilities of a daughter. Why would I, a complete stranger who you've disowned, pay the salary of your new child or fund your lifestyle?" "Charlotte, I called the agency yesterday." I continued smoothly. "I was the one who signed her employment contract. I terminated it. She is no longer my employee. If she wants to stay and cook, clean, and play the dutiful daughter for free, she is more than welcome to. And as for your living expenses, ask Laura. I'm sure she'll be happy to get a job to support her new parents." "You ungrateful little bitch." My father's voice suddenly boomed through the receiver. He must have been listening on speakerphone. "We raised you. You owe us. You think you can just cut us off? I'll take you to court for elder support. I'll ruin your reputation." "Go ahead, Dad," I replied, my heartbeat steady. I had mourned the loss of my parents a week ago in that suffocating hallway. Now I felt nothing but a clinical detachment. New York law doesn't mandate filial responsibility. And if you try to sue me in our home state, I'll bring the receipts of the $10,000 a month I've sent you for the last 5 years, plus the $6,000 a month I paid for your daughter. I'd love to see a judge's face when you complain of neglect. Before he could scream another word, I hit the red button. I went into my settings and blocked both of their numbers. Then, I blocked Laura's number. I walked into my kitchen, tossed my phone onto the marble island, and breathed in the quiet. For the first time in years, the crushing weight of obligation lifted from my chest. I was free. 6 months passed. My life in New York accelerated. Unburdened by the constant emotional drain and the massive financial hemorrhage of supporting my parents, my savings skyrocketed. I used the extra capital to put a down payment on a sleek condo in Brooklyn. At work, my focus was laser sharp, earning me a promotion to regional director. I didn't look at my hometown. I didn't check their social media. But gossip has a way of traveling, usually carried by my cousin Muriel. Every few weeks, Muriel would call, pouring a fresh cup of tea about the ongoing disaster back home. I treated it like a true crime podcast, mildly interesting, but entirely detached from my reality. Month 2. "Charlotte, it's crazy over here," Muriel said over the phone one evening. "Your parents are still parading Laura around, but she stopped wearing the housekeeper uniform. She's wearing your mom's clothes. And get this, she convinced your dad to buy her a car. Said she needed it to drive them to doctor's appointments. He used a chunk of his retirement savings to buy her a Honda." Month 4. "So, the honeymoon phase is definitely over." Muriel chuckled darkly. "My mom went over to visit your parents. The house was a mess. Laura was lying on the couch watching TikToks, while your mom was in the kitchen cooking. When my mom asked what was going on, your mom made some excuse about Laura having cramps. But my mom said Laura looked annoyed that they even had company. Month 6. Charlotte, things are getting bad. Muriel's tone was hushed, lacking its usual gossipy bounce. Your dad had a bad fall on the stairs. He broke his hip. He's in the hospital. Laura didn't even ride in the ambulance with him. She said she had anxiety and needed to stay home. Your mom looks like she's aged 10 years. Did she ask you to call me? I asked, typing out an email on my laptop, not missing a beat. She hinted at it, Muriel sighed. She kept crying, saying she didn't know how they were going to pay for the surgery out of pocket since they let their premium supplemental insurance lapse. That's a shame, I said flatly. Send flowers on my behalf. A small arrangement. Nothing flashy. Charlotte, are you really not going to step in? I mean, I know they were awful to you, but… Muriel. I stopped typing. If I step in now, I validate everything they did. They wanted a daughter who was physically present, and they got one. They chose their bed. I'm not tucking them into it. The true climax of Laura's little parasitic masquerade arrived in the 9th month. It was a Tuesday. I was in the middle of a quarterly review meeting when my phone began vibrating frantically on the conference table. It was a restricted number. I ignored it. It rang again, and again. Finally, I excused myself, stepping into the glass-walled corridor. Hello? Charlotte. Oh God, Charlotte, please. It was my mother. Her voice was unrecognizable, a hysterical, breathless sob. Background noise echoed behind her, the sterile, overlapping announcements of a hospital waiting room. I leaned against the glass. How did you get this number, Mom? I used a nurse's phone. Please don't hang up, she shrieked, her voice cracking. We need you. We have nothing. She took it. She took everything. I checked my watch. I have 10 minutes. Breathe and speak clearly. Over the next few minutes, the pathetic, predictable reality of the last 9 months unspoled. Without my monthly $10,000, my parents' lifestyle had quickly become unsustainable. Laura, no longer receiving her exorbitant salary, had grown sullen and aggressive. She stopped cooking. She stopped cleaning. To keep her happy, to keep up the delusion that they had a loving, devoted daughter, my parents began dipping heavily into their pensions to buy her clothes, jewelry, and vacations. But Laura wasn't stupid. She knew the well was drying up. When my dad broke his hip, Laura saw her window. She convinced them that because of the massive medical bills, the state might seize their assets. She played the tearful, devoted child perfectly. Transfer the house to me, she had begged. Just on paper. I'll keep it safe. It's what you promised at the dinner anyway. Terrified, heavily medicated, and desperate to hold on to their fantasy, my father signed the deed over to Laura. And? I prompted coldly. Yesterday, my mother choked out. Your father had a mild stroke. The hospital stabilized him, but they said he needs to go to an inpatient rehab facility. It costs thousands. I went home to get our bank books and the locks were changed. I let out a harsh breath. Poetic justice. I called the police, my mother wailed. But Laura showed them the deed. The house is legally hers. She told the police we were trespassing. She told them she was just a former employee who bought the house from us, and that we were harassing her. Charlotte, she emptied the joint savings account. My name was on it, but she had power of attorney from when Dad broke his hip. We have nothing. They're discharging your father tomorrow, and we have nowhere to go. Where is Laura now? I asked. She's in her house. With some man. A boyfriend she'd been hiding this whole time. My mother was hyperventilating. Charlotte, please. I'm begging you. You were right. We were so wrong. Please come save us. I looked out the window at the Manhattan skyline. For a brief second, I remembered being 10 years old, waiting in the rain after school for my parents to pick me up. They had forgotten. They had gone to a dinner party and simply forgot I existed. I remembered the cold then. It felt very much like the cold I felt right now. I'll be on a flight tonight, I said. I didn't fly back to wrap them in a warm embrace. I flew back with my lawyer. When I walked into the hospital room the next morning, the smell of antiseptic and stale sweat hit me. My father was propped up in a bed, looking frail, gray, and 20 pounds lighter. The right side of his face drooped slightly. My mother was sitting in a plastic chair, her clothes wrinkled, her hair a greasy, unkempt mess. When she saw me, she threw herself at me, sobbing, trying to grab my hands. Charlotte, my baby, you came back. I stepped back neatly, letting her hands grasp empty air. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. Let's get one thing straight before we speak, I said, my voice echoing off the linoleum. I am not here because I love you. I am here because I do not want the mess of your lives bleeding into mine. This is a cleanup operation. My father's good eye widened, tearing up. He tried to speak, but only a garbled, wet sound came out. I brought an attorney, I said, gesturing to Marcus, a sharp-suited litigator I kept on retainer in New York who had connected with a local firm. You're going to tell him exactly how Laura got the power of attorney. You're going to sign affidavits. And then, I am going to deal with her. Are you going to get our house back? My mother whimpered, shrinking back into her chair. No, I said bluntly. That house is gone. You signed it away. Even if we prove coercion, it will take years in civil court. I have no interest in fighting a years-long battle for a house I never want to set foot in again. Then what are we going to do? She sobbed. Marcus has already arranged a transfer for Dad to a state-run, Medicare-approved nursing facility. It's not luxury. The food is bland, and the rooms are shared. But he will be fed, and he will be monitored. Mom, you are moving into a small, one-bedroom assisted living apartment in the same complex. I will cover the gap that your Social Security doesn't pay. My mother looked horrified. A state facility? But we had a beautiful home. We can't live in a poor house. You should have thought of that before you gave your home to the help, I said, checking my watch. I'm heading to the house now to retrieve whatever personal documents Laura hasn't destroyed.
Sit here.
Talk to Marcus. I turned on my heel and left the room without looking back. The drive to the house was surreal. It was the same streets, the same trees, but it felt like looking at a photograph of a place I'd never actually been. I didn't knock. Marcus's local associate had already procured an emergency court order allowing me to retrieve my parents' vital documents, passports, Social Security cards, to process their Medicaid and nursing home intake. I had a sheriff's deputy waiting for me at the curb. The deputy knocked heavily on the door. It took 3 minutes before the door swung open. There stood Laura. She was wearing a silk robe that I instantly recognized as a gift I had bought my mother in Paris 3 years ago. Her hair was messy, and behind her, the house looked like a frat house after a weekend bender. Empty bottles littered the floor. A burly, heavily tattooed man was sitting on my father's recliner, playing a video game. When Laura saw me standing behind the deputy, all the color drained from her face. "Charlotte," she gasped, her hand flying to her throat. The sweet, obedient housekeeper act vanished, replaced by the panicked look of a cornered rat. "Hello, Laura." "Nice robe," I said evenly. "What is this?" the tattooed man barked, standing up. "Who the hell are you?" "Ma'am," the deputy said, handing Laura the paperwork. "We have a court order to retrieve the medical and legal documents of the former homeowners. Step aside." "This is my house," Laura shrieked, finding her voice. "They signed it over to me. They abandoned me. I was the one taking care of them. You can keep the house, Laura," I said, walking past her into the foyer. The smell of stale beer and weed was overpowering. "I don't want it. I'm just here for their passports." Laura watched me warily as I walked into my father's study. The lock had been broken off the filing cabinet. Papers were strewn everywhere. She had clearly been digging for cash or bonds. I calmly gathered the birth certificates, medical records, and passports, slipping them into my briefcase. "You think you're so smart," Laura sneered, leaning against the doorframe, her arms crossed. Her bravado was returning now that she realized I wasn't here to evict her. "You think because you wear expensive suits you're better than me. They hated you, you know. They talked about how cold and selfish you were every single night. I gave them love. I earned this house." I paused, snapping my briefcase shut. I turned to look at her. She was a pathetic, greedy creature who thought she had won the lottery. "You really didn't hire a lawyer when you had them transfer the deed, did you?" I asked softly. Laura frowned. "What are you talking about?" "You used a generic online quitclaim deed," I said, walking slowly toward her. "You transferred the title into your name to avoid probate, but you didn't do a title search." Her eyes darted nervously. "I don't know what that means. The house is mine. No mortgage. They paid it off 20 years ago." "They did." I smiled, a slow, razor-sharp expression. "But 5 years ago, my father decided to make a terrible investment in a friend's restaurant. He took out a massive home equity line of credit. $400,000. He lost it all within a year." Laura's face went chalk white. The tattooed man behind her paused his game, listening. "They couldn't afford the monthly payments," I continued, my voice dripping with quiet satisfaction. "They were going to lose the house. That's why they pressured me to move to New York, to take the high-paying corporate job instead of staying local. For the last 5 years, out of the $10,000 a month I sent them, $4,000 went directly to servicing that debt." Laura took a step back, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. "When I cut them off 9 months ago," I said, leaning in close so only she could hear, "the payment stopped. The bank has been sending warning letters for half a year, but I assume my parents hid them, too ashamed to admit to you that they were broke. By transferring the deed into your name, you didn't just take ownership of the property, Laura. You assumed the encumbrances attached to it." "You're lying," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Check the mail," I said pleasantly. "The notice of default was filed 3 weeks ago. The bank is foreclosing. And since you emptied their bank accounts, which I've already flagged to the local DA as elder financial abuse, by the way, you don't have the money to pay the arrears. I walked past her, stopping at the front door. You have about 30 days before the sheriff comes back to forcibly evict you, I said, looking around the trashed living room. Enjoy my mom's robe. It's dry clean only. I walked out the door, the morning sun hitting my face. Behind me, I heard the tattooed man start yelling at Laura, followed by the sound of something shattering. It was music to my ears. 2 days later, everything was finalized. My parents were moved into the Sunset Pines Care Facility. It was clean, highly regulated, and utterly devoid of warmth. Their room smelled of bleach and boiled vegetables. I stood at the door of their shared room. My father was asleep in his adjustable bed. My mother was sitting by the small window, looking out at the parking lot. When she heard my heels click against the floor, she turned, a hopeful, desperate light in her eyes. "Charlotte," she breathed, "the nurses said you paid for the premium cable package for us." "I did," I said, keeping my distance. You really do love us," she sobbed, burying her face in her hands. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for what we did. When Dad gets better, we'll come visit you in New York. We can be a family again. We don't need the big house. We just need you." I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the woman who had criticized my every achievement, who had demanded everything from me and offered nothing in return, who had replaced me with a hired servant the moment I didn't comply with her exact specifications. "Mom," I said gently. She looked up, wiping her tears, a wobbly smile forming on her lips. "This is the last time we are ever going to speak," I said. Her smile vanished, freezing into a mask of pure shock.
What?
"My lawyer has set up an auto-pay trust for the facility gap coverage. Your bills will be paid. You will never be on the street. I have fulfilled every legal and moral obligation a child has to their creators." I adjusted the strap of my bag on my shoulder. "But I am not your daughter anymore. You made that clear at the family dinner. You made your choice." "You can't do this," she screamed, standing up, her hands trembling. "We are your parents. You have to forgive us. We made a mistake. Actions have consequences," I said, my voice dead of any emotion. "You wanted a daughter who is physically here every day. Laura is down the street, dealing with a foreclosure and a grand larceny charge. If you want to visit her, I suggest you call her." "Charlotte, please," she wailed, rushing toward me. I stepped backward out into the hallway, raising a hand to stop her. "Goodbye, Mom. Have a good life." I turned and walked down the long, sterile corridor. I could hear her screaming my name, the sound bouncing off the linoleum walls, growing fainter and fainter with every step I took. Nurses peered out of rooms, but I didn't break my stride. I walked out the sliding glass doors of the facility and into the bright, crisp afternoon. My driver was waiting by the black town car, holding the door open for me. "To the airport, ma'am?" he asked. "Yes," I smiled, sliding into the leather back seat. "Take me home."